There is a language that runs beneath the language we speak out loud. To get the axe, to have one's neck cut off. The violence was always in the words. It didn't need to be hidden. It arrived pre-sanitized, pre-processed, handed to us already safe enough to say in a conference room. A conversation we needed to get through without anyone flinching. The metaphor didn't need our permission to become a figure of speech. It just settled like sediment, an unacknowledged nature. Man-soo notices. He holds the American and Korean idiom side by side, getting axed, getting your neck chopped off, until the violence inside the language becomes impossible to ignore. What follows is the story of a man who, without malice or ideology or any particular desire to be monstrous, simply follows the world's operating instructions to their conclusion. The horror is not that Man-soo is a monster. The horror is that he had no other choice. For Man-soo and the men around him, the job is not a job. It is the entire architecture of the self. Identity, social standing, masculine legibility, the proof, renewed daily, that you exist in a form the world recognizes. They don't just work there, they are there. So when the job goes, it is not a financial event, it is an ontological one. The self doesn't just lose income, it loses form, it loses the container that gave it shape. The man who is fired is not diminished, he is unmade. He walks out of the building, and the world no longer has a category for him. He is a function without a role, a body without a social purpose, and in a world organized entirely around function and role and purpose. That is as close to death as you can get while still breathing. She is a professional, the damage control woman who is caught between product presenter and orientation leader. She has a process. Repeat after me, I am a good person. The process has been designed, tested, and refined, optimized for the specific kind of damage that needs to be managed here. And the men in the room touch their temples and repeat after her. Losing my job is not my choice. My loving family will support me fully as I seek new opportunities. The affirmations are not therapy, they are maintenance. The system processes its own damage and repackages it as healing, as onboarding, as orientation, as a proceduralized assurance that it is going to be okay. The therapist does not ask, was this fair? She asks, how do we get you functional again? The session is not for the man, it is for the machine, the corporation servicing the parts it broke so they can re-enter. I am a good person is not a therapeutic insight, it is a liability waiver dressed as self-worth. My loving family will seek me fully as I seek new opportunity is not comfort, it is a reframing, a repackaging of loss as transition. The grammar of productivity applied to the wreckage of a human being. And the men repeat it, touching their temples. The room has a structure. The structure has a script. The script has been provided by the same institution that provided the termination. Grief has been proceduralized. Devastation has been given a format. And the format, like all formats, moves forward on its own schedule, regardless of whether anyone inside is actually okay. Man-soo's daughter repeats, under these circumstances, we can't afford to feed so many mouths. Of course, a reference to the transplanting of the family's dogs, but she is repeating her father, the language of business. The dogs are the first restructuring, a downsizing. It is not vertical, it is lateral. Vertical survival of the fittest has a kind of brutal dignity to it. The stronger wins, the weaker accepts it. There is at least a story you can tell yourself. I was outmatched, the better one succeeded. It hurts, but it has shape, a direction, a logic you can live inside. Letter grades appear next to the applicants' names as Man-soo studies them. And what the grade reveals is not a hierarchy, they reveal a cluster. These men are the same desperation, same qualification, same breaks and fractures. The system did not produce a winner and a loser, it produced competitors and told them to fight over one chair. This is lateral survival of the fittest, and it is a different kind of pain entirely. Because you cannot console yourself with being lesser. You cannot accept the verdict of inferiority. The other applicants are not better than you. They are you, but slightly differently arranged. And that proximity, that nearness, is precisely what makes the threat so actionable. This is why Man-soo doesn't just eliminate his competitors. He studies them, overhears them, absorbs their language, their pain, their specific texture of desperation. He repeats things they have said. It is not a sign of madness. It is a sign of recognition. He is becoming the convergence point of all of them. He kills them not because they are different from him, He kills them because they are the same. They are versions of himself, standing between himself and survival. And in the grammar of the world he now inhabits, that is not cruelty, that is just competition taken seriously enough. Man-soo is a victim of circumstance, operating inside the only system available to him, moved by a logic he has never named and cannot see. The invisible hand of modernity, of competition, of a dog-eat-dog world, does not need a puppeteer. There is no villain pulling the strings. The system doesn't require a face. It just needs enough people who have internalized its logic deeply enough that they carry it forward, automatically. Man-soo is not being manipulated by a corporation. He is being moved by an idea. The idea that competition is natural, that elimination is necessary, that winning is its own justification. The murders feel like business decisions, not clean ones, not elegant ones. They are messy, improvised, half-thought, ugly managerial choices made under pressure with incomplete information, and yet they work, which is exactly how the institutional brutality tends to operate. Not with precision, not with competence, just with the dull, devastating momentum of a process that has already decided the outcome and is simply working through the paperwork. The system has put the axe into the hand of the man it has already beheaded. There is a moment when Man-soo has to be calm, has to perform normalcy, has to hold the surface still while everything underneath is moving. And so he drinks. Not the way a man with a problem drinks, not for escape, not for oblivion. He drinks the way a machine lubricates itself. A functional quantity, enough to quiet the last remaining biological friction, the part of him that still hesitates, that still registers what is happening as something that should not be happening. The alcohol doesn't make him someone else. It makes him more fully what the situation requires. Even the body's resistance gets administered. Man-soo is both the one being severed and the severing instrument, the fired and the firing, the victim and the mechanism. And the story holds both those things simultaneously without resolving them, because the point is that they are not in contradiction. In the world he now inhabits, they are the same role. Man-soo suspects his wife is cheating on him. It is not quite a suspicion. It is a premonition borrowed from another sense of diminishment, an insecurity dressed up as foresight. He is not responding to evidence. He is responding to a feeling that the world is about to take one more thing. The dentist is the obvious trigger. Midi's employer, a man with a stable income and a professional title and a social identity that has not been revoked. In a world where Man-soo's worth was entirely bound to his function, losing that function means losing the right to be chosen. The insecurity is not irrational. It is the logical extension of a self-concept built entirely on economic legibility. If I am my job, and my job is gone, then what am I? And if I am nothing, why would she stay? Then the world hands him a mirror. Man-soo witnesses firsthand a man being cheated on, sees the portrayal up close, and the life of someone who is also broken in the same way, also lateral, also adjacent. It is not evidence of anything happening in his own marriage. It is just a preview. The world showing him what happens to men like him. The insecurity is the last symptom of a man who still believes love and survival are separate categories, who still thinks the personal and the professional operate by different rules. It stays with him until he doesn't need it anymore, until he understands that Midi was never going anywhere. Not because the world is kind, but because she already speaks the language. She already knows the rules. She was never the exception to the rule. She was always already inside it, waiting for him to arrive. Midi provides the story as the proof that something human survives the system. She doesn't leave. She doesn't threaten. She doesn't issue ultimatums or demand explanations. She gets the job. She takes on the provider's role, swims when Man-soo is sinking. And for a moment you exhale. At least there is this. At least the marriage is the place where the modern logic of corporate fiendism doesn't reach. And then without saying it directly, Midi tells Man-soo, if you need to hide a body, I will hide a body with you. The language is the same one the system speaks. Loyalty as complicity. Commitment to mutual liability. Love as a non-disclosure agreement written in vows. The warmth is genuine, but the warmth is also a symptom. Midi has applied the language of business, domestically, and the story does something precise and cruel with that. It offers her as the human exception, the warm thing outside the cold system, and then reveals she is the human confirmation. The system doesn't just live in boardrooms and HR departments. It colonizes intimacy. It gets into the marriage, into the way two people who love each other talk about their future. And by the time it is there, It doesn't feel like corruption, it feels like being practical, being a team, being realistic about the world. The corporatism of the self, the corporatism of the family, the literal depiction of the corporate setting. 3 levels of the same infection, each one with a different depth, each one doing the same thing in a different register, and none of them announcing the connection. They just rhyme. The system doesn't need to be imposed from outside. It gets reproduced from inside by people who love each other, because it is the only shared language left. The journey is not a transformation, it is an education, and the curriculum was always the same. The competition is natural, elimination is necessary, winning is its own justification. Man-soo just needed enough time, enough humiliation, and enough proximity to his own reflection in the faces of men he was competing against to finally absorb the lesson. The murders are not the moral crisis, they are the pedagogy. Each one is a lesson. Each one is the world teaching Man-soo how it actually works, and the only language it knows, consequence. The messy, improvised, accidentally successful consequence of a man learning, in real time, to think like the system that destroyed him. There is a procedural grief to all of it. The therapy as onboarding, the letter grades, the fact that the system has a forum for everything, including the devastation it causes. Man-soo just extends that administrative logic one step further. He has a process. It is ugly and improvised and morally hideous, and it works. Which is exactly how the system works. Not elegantly, not competently, just inevitably, just unfair. The only thing standing between Man-soo and success was Man-soo, his own residual belief that the world operated by different rules than it actually does. Once he stops resisting the shape of things accommodates him. Man-soo wins. He gets the job. The family unit succeeds. The atrocities are not punished. Not because the story is endorsing them, but because punishment would imply the system has a moral dimension. The system doesn't punish or reward based on ethics. It rewards based on outcomes. Man-soo produced the outcome. The system responded accordingly. This is not a crime going unpunished. It is a transaction completed. The ending is not a collapse of morality. It is a confirmation of cosmology, of the universal operating system. Survive or be survived. Produce or be processed. Outcomes are the only currency. The ending doesn't subvert those rules or punish them or even question them. The world is built so that the person who most fully internalizes its logic is the one who succeeds. Man-soo didn't beat the system. He didn't find a loophole. He didn't get away with anything. He finally learned how the world actually works. No other choice is about the way a system erases the appearance of choice. Not with a gun to your head or a villain in a boardroom or a moment where you can point to afterward and say, there, that is where it happened. It happens in the language, in the therapy session that asks, how do we get you functional again? In the marriage that loves you in the only vocabulary available. The systemic violence is so total, so ambient, so load-bearing in the architecture of everyday life, that by the time a man is standing over a body, the logic that brought him there is indistinguishable from the logic that got him fired, that got him into therapy, that got him out of bed that morning. The atrocity and the severance meeting are the same event, just different paperwork. And at every step, every single step, there was no other choice. It isn't personal, it's business.